Craig Norris, PhD.
All right, the world of the radio. This is media on another fantastic day here in the Media Tackle world, Edge Radio. So this is Craig Norris, and coming at you for another week, talking about everything in and around the world of media, pop culture, entertainment, bizarre stuff. Today's show is going to be another little recap of some weird and wonderful things that have come across my desk that I thought everyone might be interested in knowing a little bit about. Let's start, though, with a little bit of a snippet from a song to see if people can guess what's happening. For those that are watching on YouTube and Twitch, you'd see already in the left-hand corner what it is. For those who don't, might nostalgically remember from the 1980s, the anime Robotech from the original Japanese anime series Macross, as well as two other shows. And interestingly, of course, Robotech, one of those primal animes after Astro Boy and Giganta and others, hit the 80s, and that for many young kids of that generation really defined the idea of anime. You had transforming robot jets, or jets modeled on the kind of Top Gun Tomcat design, and transforming into robots or hybrid in between robot airplanes, and battling against the evil Zentradi forces to protect the protoculture. It's a very exciting cartoon in the time, and the great news is that hopefully this time around it looks like there will be a live-action movie happening of it. So there's been an announcement that the director of the Hawkeye Netflix series has come on board to take on the Robotech project. Just going through a little bit from the Gizmodo article. I love how the Gizmodo article starts with a kind of Dune reference with the protoculture must flow. Finally, instead of spice, we have protoculture. Protoculture, this bizarre substance within the Macross universe of kind of life. And Robotech, the English name of it, and it had long been held up kind of in wrangling between the owners of it, Harmony Gold in the West, and then the Japanese owners, and the kind of impasse they came to over many, many years. So, this idea of a live-action Robotech movie goes way back to 2007, and it's gone through numerous cycles of directors being attached to it. Everyone from Aquaman's James Wan to the guy that did the movie It, Andy Muschietti. But now it looks like Rhys Thomas from the Hawkeye series, as Disney Plus, will be taking it on. So, Hawkeye kind of landed really strongly as a Netflix series, looking at the Marvel superhero Hawkeye. Hope is that they might be able to do a good job with Robotech. I mean, Robotech, nowhere near as well known in the West as Transformers, but nevertheless, powerful imagery. I mean, certainly one of my favorites. One of the things I like about Robotech is I think it is an example of a type of, you've got military power on one side, so the humans who have come into possession of this high-tech machinery at the start of the Macross series, and they have to battle against the evil Zentradi forces, right? So you got hard power, but then as the series goes on, it's revealed that one of their weaknesses, one of the ways to defeat the aliens, is through the power of music and love and song. This idea of soft power, I would say, as a way to finally defeat the aliens. I quite like that idea of hard power. So you got a lot of machinery, Macross is famous for having, I think, that three elements. The really cool mech designs of the spaceships, as well as the Veritic fighters. Then it has the music, very powerful music, and a love triangle often. And the musical component and the love triangle component, counterbalances in soft power this idea of hard power, the military. And I think it's kind of clever. It's not just an action, series. Many people in the West might not quite get into the love triangle and music component of it, because the music, of course, is very much, your Japanese idol singer type music. But nevertheless, it does set it apart from your typical Western fare. Robotech is a watering down of that, so it'll be interesting to see if they continue with the idol singer and love conquers all kind of soft power narrative, or if they just commit to, a kind of more Transformers battle after battle sequence. So, interesting. Robotech. While I'm talking about Robotech, I did come across another thing today in the news, which was Tim Burton being rumored to come back to do the Mars Attacks movie. So he did Mars Invades. What was it? Mars Invades. Way back, had a huge all-star cast: Danny DeVito, Jack Nicholus, and it was kind of a bomb at the time, but it's well worth going back and watching. And of course, the aliens in Mars Attacks were defeated by the power of music. It was yodeling in that. So again, another soft power example of that. While we're on music, the next bit, we'll play a quick track so you can guess whether or not you know what I'm going to be talking about. So here it is in the background. Right. Again, if there's any anime fans out there, they'd know that track as well from Tonari no Totoro, Ghibli's movie, My Neighbor Totoro, really popular. And big news about My Neighbor Totoro is that in Britain's Royal Shakespeare Company, yes, Britain's Royal Shakespeare Company is set to stage a theatrical adaptation of My Neighbor Totoro. So Joe Hisaishi, the musical composer of the Totoro animated movie, is going to be helping to bring the My Neighbor Totoro to the theatre through the Britain's Royal Shakespeare Company. How exciting. So, reading through this news that was posted up on AV Club, looks like it's not going to be a musical, even though Joe Hisaishi's heavily involved in helping adapt the original 1988 anime masterpiece into it. And those people that haven't seen My Neighbor Totoro, basically tells the story of two little girls who have had to relocate with their dad to a countryside, kind of rural house, while their mum is in hospital being treated for her illness. And they kind of enter into this kind of magical space of animism, fairy tales, and the titular Totoro appears, this kind of a spirit deity type figure. And this, it's an enormously successful Japanese animated movie, classic. It's screened every year in Japan on TV. So it's one of those ones which is up there with, I guess, anything in the West that we might know of as Disney. It's certainly equivalent. Many people would argue better. So maybe but Totoro's coming to a theatrical version. Now, it's not going to be a musical, unfortunately, or fortunately. It's going to be a more straight theatrical production, and again with the Bell Shakespeare Company. Why the Bell Shakespeare Company? Well, it turns out that there'd been other attempts to translate material like Matilda into theatrical performance, and it had gone so well that Ghibli reached out. It seems, the story goes, that Ghibli reached out to the Royal Shakespeare Company to adapt their work into a theatrical performance. So this is coming soon, actually, over in the UK. It's going to debut at London's Barbican Centre on October 8th, 2022, through to January 21st, 2023. Hey, so with borders opening, who knows? Maybe someone will get over there to watch it. Of course, listeners in the UK will be able to enjoy that as well. Probably a little easier. So it's going to be interesting. Interestingly, reading the article, they say that they're not going to cast children as the two leads, of course, the two young girls. And they've said that's because the amount of things that the performers are going to have to do. There's going to be puppetry, physical stuff, so yeah. So that's going to be really quite interesting to see the Royal Shakespeare Company adaptation of My Neighbor Totoro. Out of left ear. All right, so let's play now some other audio samples to see if people listening along can guess what this story is. That's pretty short. That sounds exciting, doesn't it? Sounds... One more? Yep. Or maybe to give it away a little easier, this might be the experience many people have if they successfully complete one of these. Right, that's it. These are loot boxes, right? So this is about the in video games, this idea of loot boxes. So these are, as you're playing your game, particularly notorious examples in free-to-play games or games where, you know, maybe there's a pay-to-win mechanic or a kind of perk for some people that are playing the game where it's a free-to-play game, but you can spend a little bit of money if you want to get really nice kind of costume for your character or a slightly better tweaked something. And what you can do is buy something called a loot box, which is a box which will open within the game, which has, you know, like let's say it's a 1% chance of getting a really special character skin, and it has a 80% chance of just getting some kind of in-game currency thing. Anyway, so the idea of a loot box is that it promises this high reward for a high risk. And this story is all about, of course, we're in a federal election cycle. Video games coming into the federal election cycle just recently. This was an article in the Mercury newspaper in Tassie talking about how there's a new election pledge based around legislating loot boxes by reclassifying their status in video games. So to read the article a little bit, so video games with loot boxes, which, as I've said, encourage players to gamble, right, for virtual gear, because you have to spend some money to open up to get this loot box, and you're gambling, hoping you'll get this high reward thing, but there's a statistically tiny, minuscule chance of getting it, so you're kind of gambling in that way. So virtual gear will get a mandatory age classification. So the whole news here is that there's a push to legislate mandatory age classifications for any games that involve a loot box. And this was a change that's announced by Communication Minister Paul Fletcher, and this was on April 26th, 2022. So this has been a kind of controversial aspect to games that have been flagged by many countries. So, for example, in Japan, Netherlands, loot boxes are entirely banned in those countries. There's legislation around banning those. So, of course, loot boxes within games such as Roblox, which has a lot of young people playing it, or really, really popular games as well as Roblox, like Halo 5, have received a lot of criticism by parent groups and anti-gambling lobbies talking about how they are really targeting underage players. So the idea being that there'll be legislation to put an age classification, what is it, R18 plus classification, So the new changes to Australia's classification rules, so not only will they deal with loot boxes appearing, but also will include warnings about suicide depiction and violence against women, as well as child abuse material. So Mr. Fletcher said the warnings were designed to give parents clearer advice about the content of video games, and in the case of loot boxes, alert them to the presence of in-game purchases. So if you're giving your kid pocket money, or your kid is earning money through part-time work, suddenly all their income is disappearing into loot boxes, and to talk about the economy that's driving that, the statistically low chance of getting it, right? You might be reading on a forum, suddenly everyone's saying, hey, I got this from my loot box and so forth. But, because you're seeing it on a forum, you're often getting a bias. The only people that are going to be posting on a forum for a game like Roblox or something are going to be those that win. So on the forum, it might look like everyone's winning these prizes. I've got to get my loot box because everyone else seems to be winning prizes on the Reddit forum that I looked at. And of course, that's a bias of reporting, and statistically, again, there's a tiny chance. So they're not banning that content. They're not going to ban loot boxes, but they are going to introduce a classification code. So they're going to reclassify games, and loot boxes that have them will be flagged. Of course, Luke, in Tassie, MP Andrew Wilkie has long, and the article goes on to talk about Andrew Wilkie's strong efforts to try and crack down on this type of, what he refers to as barely disguised gambling. So again, the idea being that loot boxes legislation around trying to change the classification of them goes some way to helping address this problem. University studies have researched the impact of loot boxes on young gamers, if it does foster problem gambling or positive attitudes towards gambling, which are possibly misrepresentative of their statistical likelihood of getting them. So a number of university studies have raised red flags around kids engaging with loot boxes and the type of literacies required to kind of unpack that experience. But, it's interesting looking at the number of games which do have loot boxes. A lot of them have been removed. But while some games have removed loot boxes, so Fortnite has removed loot boxes, and Fortnite, enormously popular game, many others continue to use these type of microtransactions to generate a revenue. So Call of Duty, the article references a couple of them: Call of Duty, Black Ops 4, Apex Legends, Gears of War 4, NBA 2K20, and Street Fighter 5. So they're certainly being used, and certainly you might be playing a free-to-play game on your phone or something, and it's free-to-play because, the video gaming language of it, the whales who are out there are going to be spending enormous amounts of money to get it. And, when you think about it as a whale, right, you're thinking someone... I remember talking to someone that I knew that worked in Sega, and he was saying that he was working in kind of these microtransactions, and statistically, he was saying a lot of the game he was looking at, the geographic locations were in incredibly wealthy countries, like Middle Eastern type, oil-generating countries. And he was saying that statistically there were a lot of enormous purchases coming out of some of these spaces. But sometimes you forget that it's not just the idea of someone that has a lot of discretionary income. It can be young kids for whom that idea of risk and reward might be more difficult to balance. So loot boxes, around the corner possible legislation. We'll keep the musical theme going. Here's another snippet of a track to see if anyone is triggered by this song. Right, so it's kind of orchestra song. And look, if you've ever played Civilization 6, video game Civilization 6, that song probably immediately places you back into playing that game. So Civilization 6 is a kind of empire building game. It's a strategy game. You're kind of starting off as a tribal village, and you've got to build your village up through expansion and development and resource management and technological and scientific development so that you can win the game, right? So what's really interesting about this type of game, the civilization type game, is there an article I was reading on crack.com talking about the surprising adult origin of one of gaming's most confusing terms. So Civilization is considered one of the best, what's referred to as 4X games. Right, Civilization is considered one of the best of the 4X games. There's many others out there that are there. There's like Hearts of Iron 4. There's Scythe. I was playing Scythe recently. Stellaris. Anyway, there's kind of 4X games of exploration. So the term comes about from a article written. Well, what does it say that was written? Way back in the 80s, I want to say. So the term 4X, which has now become an industry standard to refer to these type of games, actually has some origins in pornography. It's a tangential origin, but nevertheless interesting. So the writer Alan Emmerich, who first coined the term 4X in a video game preview that he'd written for Computer Gaming World, was trying to think of a way he could rate the game that would really stand out and be eye-catching. So he thought of, in pornography you have, or in America, you have the kind of XXX or 4X rating as kind of hardcore porn. So he thought, well, rating a game as having 4X would really be eye-catching to readers. And he legitimized this 4X category, so XXXX, by defining the 4X's as explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. So I guess it should be 4 E's. But 4X's, so again, the idea that trying to make it eye-catching, trying to kind of like you got XXX porn. Well, this is a 4X video game. It's not porn. It is a civilization builder, and you explore. You're expanding your empire, you're exploiting resources, and then often you're fighting against your neighbors, so you're exterminating. Explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate 4X. So there you go. If you ever wondered why, like you're talking to someone about, say, I'm really enjoying this 4X game, you can say, well, that has a porn origin, doesn't associate with it, but it's explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Last story. So again, I was looking through Cracked, and there was one last story I want to go over, which was just amused me. Again, it was from Cracked.com, and it's an experience that many people may no longer have that much. Netflix and streaming services have dominated the engagement with media content, television, movies, so much that the humble DVD or Blu-ray is kind of collecting dust. But this article was talking about 5 beloved movies that had completely bonkers DVDs. And the bonkerness of the DVD is the menu screen. I don't know if anyone, well, obviously, you remember the menu screen. So you put your DVD in, you might have some warning messages come up, stealing's piracy or something. Then you'd hit the menu screen, you got your chapter selection, your play movie, your language selection, so forth. And this is talking about some of these movies have incredibly insane DVD menu screens, which are just, they're not good insane. They're very bad insane. So the first one, and the one I'll play a short audio capture from, is from the Knight's Tale DVD, released way back in 2001. And this one, of course, Knight's Tale starred Heath Ledger, one of his really big breakthrough roles before he went on, of course, to become enormously popular through playing the Joker in Nolan's Batman trilogy, or the second one. This is from Knight's Tale. So this is kind of a movie set in medieval England, knights, jousting and so forth. And what really set this film apart was that it had a very contemporary music score. It would have Queen, AC/DC, David Bowie throughout the movie as the music they were listening to, as music that would occur throughout the movie. So it was a very, kind of mashing up of genres. It was a, period piece in terms of costuming, set design, and so forth, but then it was a bizarrely contemporary piece in terms of music scoring. And the DVD, the people that put together the DVD of A Knight's Tale really committed to the idea of a contemporary music score because... And what I love about this, and I'll get a short excerpt played, is that the whole DVD just plays hard, like Beastie Boys music at a high volume, and then it goes on a loop with the Beastie Boy yell. Right? Immediately irritating. And this, you just got to sit through it while you're choosing things. I'll play a short snippet of it. What I also love about this, if you do jump into YouTube to have a look at the original Knight's Tale 2001 DVD menu walkthrough YouTube, is that someone's just recorded it. There are people that just record using their mobile phone video camera the DVD menu screens, which is the only way I guess some of these are preserved now. So let's have a quick listen to number 5, the number 5 choice for Cracked worst DVD menu screens. So it seems to start okay, nice operatic chanting. Yeah. That's the Beastie Boy shout, and this is just the menu screen. It's just scrolling through looking at special features. This is just Beastie Boy yell stuck in the background. And you just can't get out of it. Yeah, so, and that goes for forever. And that reminded me, there was an art to creating DVD menu screens. So number 4 choice is the Rocky Horror Picture Show DVD menu. And look, if people want to check these out, I'm sure you could pop into your local secondhand store or Vinnie's store, and there's probably DVD copies of these around. The reason the Rocky Horror Picture Show DVD is so notorious for its menu screens is that it has all of these steps you've got to take before you actually get to the choices to play the movie. FBI or kind of legislation warnings pop up continually through it. And then there's animated walking legs. Someone has been employed to wear the kind of suspender fishnet stockings of the Tim Curry character. And that just runs around in the menu screen. The third choice of the worst DVD menu screen is the Die Hard DVD. And the reason why that really stands out is that it's a fully animated CGI pan of the Nakatomi building. And helicopters and giant explosions and full orchestral blasting is going on in your eyes and ears while you're trying to just wait for the play movie button to appear or chapter choice to appear. And you're stuck with this wonderfully dated animated CGI, really faithful reproduction of the Nakatomi building that, of course, Die Hard set in. And it kind of goes onto the helicopter landing pitch, and you kind of go in through the front door, and then, or in through the door at the top of the building, and then it finally reveals scene selection and other things will play the movie. Number 2 choice is the Cat in the Hat DVD menu screens. This is considered so horrible to engage with as a menu screen because the menu screen doesn't actually have buttons for you to press. That is, it doesn't actually let you see where the play button is or chapter selection button is until you pass a kind of mini game. You've got to kind of play this mini game while the characters are taunting you about not being able to kind of play the DVD. And it's it's meant to be just infuriating while you're getting kids riffing and Mike Myers shouting at you to play the movie, but you can't. The worst one in the Cracked Article's top 5 worst menu screens for DVDs is The Fifth Element, and if you can grab a copy of The Fifth Element DVD, this seems really interesting because it's again a headache, nausea, and dizziness-inducing kind of falling experience. So, it's interesting because the DVD menus are trying to replicate, in a way, the movie itself. They're trying to do a narrative extension of what made this movie engaging. What's a memorable part of this movie? Well, if you're thinking of The Fifth Element, there is a scene where they jump out the window and they're kind of flying through, and the taxi car that Bruce Willis's character is driving is kind of plummeting down through the multi-level flying car highway that is on. Anyway, that was their choice for the menu screen, which is you plummeting down continually as cars and traffic pass by you. It's quite nausea-inducing. And the worst thing about this is not just you've got a POV of constant falling. The menu choices, the play movie, the special features, the chapter selection, all of that appears randomly floating up to you, right? So you can't even, just play the movie. You have to wait for the play movie little icon to pass you by as you're plummeting down and down this gritty urban tech street of The Fifth Element. And so there you go. Blu-rays, DVDs, menu screens, they're a lost art now, but in the future they might be a kind of weird curiosity. It's like, there's a whole curiosity about what these menu screens were. Why was such effort put into these menu screens, and why were some of them so physically and mentally affronting? Why were they so nausea-inducing? And for those ones, I'm glad there's an archive. Again, on YouTube, I am just amazed at the number of people that have recorded just these opening screen loops, these menu screen loops for prosperity, so that we can, under proper supervision, watch them and be thankful, I guess, for all of streaming services' shortcomings that they have skipped some of these horrible menu screen problems. But look, there's equally menu screens that were very clever. I can't think of any offhand, but let's set that up as a challenge. Let's try to create some, or think of what the best menu screen DVD Blu-ray experiences we've had. What ones really were pathways into the text? What ones were wonderful entry points, invitational strategies to engage with that movie? So that's on Cracked.com. Well, that was the exciting week that was in media and pop culture. Some bizarre material that's come across. So we've had DVD menu screens, adult origins of the Forex video gaming term, federal election terms, really timely stuff on this show. Video games with loot boxes are now going to get new, or proposed to have new regulatory rules placed on them. The Royal Shakespeare Company is to stage Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro, and Robotech is going to get a live-action, well, it's been announced for many, many years, since 2007 it's going to get a live-action movie, but now it's got Hawkeye director Rhys Thomas attached to it. That's your Friday, so go check out Robotech if you haven't watched it. Watch My Neighbor Totoro again. Avoid loot boxes. And play your Forex games, and maybe, chuck on a DVD, not to watch the movie, but just to have the music looping on the background. I had a friend once that put on the Rambo 4 one, the one where he goes to Thailand or Burma, and he left the house, and he didn't realize that was one of these DVDs that just had this incredibly loud background track that plays on loop in the menu screen. And if you've got to actually turn your DVD and TV off for it to stop, and he just didn't realize that, and he left the house overnight, and he came home the next morning, and he could hear it, as he was walking up to his apartment. The tragedy of that. So that's Media Tackle for another week. I hope you've found some interesting stuff to keep yourself occupied. Keep listening to Edge Radio, more interesting and bizarre music and kind of normal music as well. Coming around the second, we've got Adrian for about half an hour coming on, and keep listening to Edge Radio. This has been Media Tackle for another week. Enjoy.